It was shown in, I believe, 1966 by the chemists Yielding and Sturglantz that psychedelic molecules do intercalate into DNA in vitro, in the test tube, in a series of very elegant experiments.
Or I'll just be passively farming a reflectoring before we go to Chorrera. It should be fun. And this is a super good quality recording. This is a really good quality recording, so I'm excited to share it, and I hope that you like it as much as I do. Starting at 30 seconds in.
The story of my professional life is the mycologists loathed me when they realized all I cared about was psilocybin. The scholars say I'm not scholarly enough. The nuts say I'm too straight. The straight people say I'm too nuts. And so it all goes many different ways. One time it was conveyed to me that Marlene Dobkin de Rios said of me, but his scholarship is flawed. And I just roared. It reminded me of the unclear on the concept kind of cartoon. It's not really about that. What there was interest in discussing, and it's only, I mean, perhaps or somewhat marginal to all of this, but fun to talk about, is the magical phlems that Sparrow mentioned. This is well, here's the background information. They're persistent in the Amazon. Well, as you know, a lot of magic which goes on in the Amazon has to do with the sending of a magical object into the body of an enemy or a person.
I could be crazy, but like for me, whenever I listen to these talks, sometimes certain statements will resonate. And it'll feel like the speaker is talking directly to me. And if ever that's your experience, I always just tell people that like they should just roll with that. Just feel like it was literally just said for you, because then I think it'll just like have more of an impact. Even if you don't agree with it, just if something strikes you really strongly, I think it's just like good to hold on to. Personally, that's just me. What a trippy picture.
Person who is made sick, and then the shamans suck these objects out, and invariably, if you're a particularly positivist chucklehead, the question arises for you, is it real? Meaning, you know, can we put it on display in a museum? And then the shamans say yes and no, and sometimes, depending on who you're talking to and probably how much aguardiente they have moving through them at the moment. Persistent is the idea that these ayahuasqueros vomit or produce out of their bodies some kind of substance, a magical substance that is the basis of use out of their bodies, some kind of substance, a magical substance that is the basis of their witchcraft. And, you know, your attitude toward this can be that it's sleight of hand, or that it's lying, or that it's absolutely true. In my talk yesterday, I said, you know, we give great respect to these shaman. How seriously do we take their claim to do all their magic via helping spirits who are ancestors? And then we sort of explored that. Well, we give these shamans great respect. How seriously then are we obligated, or should we take the claim that they do all of their magic by the production of a magical fluid out of their mouths and bodies, a fluid whose ontological status is far from clear? That's what I mean by you can't tell whether it's real or not. Dennis, in the early, in 1970,
Dennis is Terrence's
came
brother.
across a reference to this in some piece of literature. I confess that I have occasionally cited it as Michael Harner's article, The Sound of Rushing Water, which appeared in Natural History magazine in 1967. Just to confirm Marlene's opinion, if you actually read that article, you will discover there is no reference to this in there. I couldn't find a reference in the literature until years after our investigation of the phenomenon was pretty much wrapped up. I was amazed to discover that our supposition that such a thing existed actually is supported in the literature. Luis Eduardo Luna, who some of you may know, and most of you probably know his book on ayahuasca painting, has talked about this in numerous of his more scholarly publications. What is claimed is that there are among very unacculturated people a habit, when intoxicated on ayahuasca, of vomiting a material, and then it's said, what's said of it is that it's blue, that the shamans use it to accomplish all their magic, and that when you spread it out on the bottom of a flat bowl, that you can see the future in it, or the past in it. Well, if we just behave like good phenomenologists and don't try to scientifically analyze this, but phenomenologically analyze it, then we have to say what is being described is a form of matter which also partakes of the quality of mind. It appears to be something which is both physical and spiritual, both substantial and psychic or psychological in some sense. And one of our motivations, I told you the story about going to La Chorrera and the search for ukuhe, but one of our motivations was to investigate this magical material and to see if we could encounter it. Sparrow is the only person I've ever met who claims to have seen something blue come out of someone's mouth on an ayahuasca trip and to be pushed back in. Some of you were there when he made the reference. You saw that I pulled no strings and in fact said nothing to prompt it. So I regard it as uncontaminated information from a deep forest informant. So what is it? Is a reasonable question for curious people to ask. Dennis, who tends these days to rein himself in somewhat, back in the early 70s was always willing to run the speculative engine at double speed.
Yo, night
and
Jasper,
he felt
thank you for dropping
that,
by.
Well, he
Hold
had
on.
a concept. And
I hope your day's going good. Thank you so much for coming by. We're listening to some more Terrance Mckenna talking about this substance that shamans would sort of vomit while they were doing ayahuasca, I suppose, and indulged qualities of mind, apparently. And it was blue, and if you spread it on the bottom of a flat bowl, then it shows you the future. And so that's what we're listening to Terrence Mckenna talk about right now. It comes back together. It's a little less disparate, but I was like really interested in playing these talks. I had a lot of fun doing it the other day, and I'm like, I should just do this more. Like, this stuff's awesome, and I love listening to it too. It's just so good. I love the quality of Terrence's voice and the enunciation so much.
the concept was that it's actually, it's an interlocking set of hypotheses, none of which have ever been secured. And I have to background it a little bit. As you know, it is a great mystery in neurophysiology, the mystery of memory and how it works and where are the memories is a question that has never been answered. The problem for materialists is that it's well understood that every molecule in your body is changed in about a 5 to 9 year period. You are not who you were 10 years ago. Every atom, every molecule in your body has been swapped out with one significant exception, which is the neural substrate, the neural matrix. What you're born with is what you die with. So the memory, if you believe in a physical site of storage, and all scientists do because there is no other medium open for a scientist to believe in, then it must be stored in the neural matrix. Well, so then you try to create a hypothesis of a mechanism for this memory storage and recovery. Now, this raises another complex issue, which is, and I'm moving at lightning speed here, the issue of the nature of information in biological systems. As you all know, organisms are created and maintained by DNA. And I assume everybody understands how DNA works. I mean, it's just something you learn in high school biology courses. DNA is a very complex, superhelixed molecule that is essentially two structural members which are twining around each other like a liana, and then they are connected across by nucleotides. And these nucleotides in groups of 3 are what are called codons, and they code for amino acids. This is, it's an important but subtle distinction that they code for the amino acids. In other words, there is nothing in principle that links a certain codon in chemistry to a certain amino acid. It is simply a conventionalized association that has apparently come into existence over millions and millions of years of evolution, so that adenine, guanine, adenine codes for something, and so forth and so on. In other words, there is a symbolic representation of the amino acids in the codons of DNA. Well, memory is also information, but it's a different kind of information. It's what's called epigenetic information. And if you were to take what I'm saying and about to say to an orthodox molecular biologist, he would very condescendingly explain to you that you had made an amateurish mistake and had confused genetic information, the information which codes for proteins, with epigenetic information, symphonies, novels, works of philosophy, conversations, so forth and so on. And but this same condescending neuromolecular biologist is totally unable to account for the phenomenon of memory. Well, noticing that nature functions always with a certain economy when that's possible, it seems like a reasonable first hypothesis would be that memory is coded somehow into the DNA. And giving a slight aid and comfort to this idea is the well-known fact that there are vast portions of the DNA molecule that are called the nonsense portions. In other words, they do not code for protein. No one knows what these vast stretches of DNA are for, and the orthodox explanation is that they are just errors, trash, basically, that has accumulated in the evolutionary process. Nevertheless, the mystery of memory is left unexplained. How are the memory traces laid down, and how are they recalled? Well, Dennis's notion in trying to think about what the psychedelic experience is was that perhaps psychedelic molecules have a relationship to the DNA that has not been elucidated by science. And in his favor is the fact that many of these psychedelic molecules, especially the ones most near and dear to us, such as psilocybin, harmine, harmaline, DMT, are what are called planar molecules. In other words, if we could explode a molecule of harmine up to the size of a bathtub, what we would have is a flat structure. The two benzene rings associated with the pentexyl group in the middle, and it is of the correct dimension, coincidentally enough, that a harmine molecule could in fact fit into a DNA molecule between the nucleotide pairs without disrupting the structure of the DNA. This is a studied phenomenon. Molecules which, the word is intercolate, molecules which can slip in between the DNA pairs, the nucleotide pairs, are called intercolators or dimers. And most of them are highly toxic because in the process of slipping in there, they distort the helical structure of the molecule. In other words, they kink it up. A molecule that some of us have experience with that I believe works this way is chloroquine. Chloroquine, this is why I say, it's a heavy drug. It messes with your genetic machinery. It's actually getting in there. And usually these molecules are used in vitro work with DNA because they can be used as markers. You can take a radioactive dimer and it will intercalate into DNA, and then you can perform certain operations and measurements. But it was shown in, I believe, 1966 by the chemists Yielding and Sturglantz that psychedelic molecules do intercalate into DNA in vitro, in the test tube, in a series of very elegant experiments in which what they did is they took denatured DNA, unfolded from its superstructure, but still helix DNA, and they put it in test tubes with various drug molecules, and they shook it up, and then they measured the specific gravity of the molecular complex that resulted, and they showed that the specific gravity had increased by a number which was always divisible by the molecular weight of the drug molecule. This is pretty elegant demonstration that the drug molecule has in fact intercalated into the DNA. Now, against this, at that time, we're talking now the early 70s, was a near dogma of neurophysiology, which said movement of materials in the neuron, which is what a nerve cell is called, movement of materials in the neuron is from the nucleus to the synapse. you all recall that the synapse is where these drug molecules do their work, because there are lock and key relationships, and they shift the, well, it's not known, either the steric configuration or the electrical activity of the synapse. And so when we would talk to orthodox molecular biologists about this, they would say, well, there is no known mechanism of transport from the synapse to the neuron, to the nucleus of the neuron. And if you're hypothesizing that memory is somehow stored in the DNA, then somehow experiences which affect the synapse have to, there has to be some conveyance of this change of state at the synaptic cleft back to the nucleus in the neuron. And these nerve cells are very elongated structures. The axon is can be several millimeters in length. In some cases, like in the squid axon, it's quite large, over a centimeter, I think. Anyway, now giving aid and comfort to our side is the fact that in the early 80s, 10 years after the experiment at La Chorrera, a new intracellular process was discovered called axioplasmic transport. And it was discovered that, in fact, molecular species generated in the synaptic cleft do turn up associated with the nucleus of the molecule, of the neuron. So, okay, this all lays the basis for his notion, which was that somehow psychedelic molecules, which normally operate in the synaptic cleft, can be conveyed into the nucleus of the neuron and there intercolate, and somehow this is the basis for a mechanism of modifying the silent portions of the DNA and information, not of the genetic sort, but of a transient and epigenetic sort, because your memories die with you, although Jungians might take issue here, but let's leave that issue alone for a minute. Your memories die with you, so there was a mechanism for this to happen. So, I'm not sure. Well, give me a moment here. So one of the things that we were investigating when we went to La Chorrera, Dennis believed that the importance of chanting in this Amazonian shamanism was that acoustical sound was being used as a driver to synergize this process of intercolation. And it has been demonstrated in the laboratory that you can use acoustical energy to cause the intercolation of dimers into DNA. So shortly after we arrived at La Chorrera, he created a very elaborate theory, which is described in excruciating detail in The Invisible Landscape, which is a very hard book to obtain, but it will be reprinted in 1994.
Yo, I'll play The Invisible Landscape
Harper.
At some point.
He
it's so
constructed a very elegant experiment, which looks like part science, part magic, and the idea was that you would load your system with psychedelic molecules, and he believed that electron spin resonance, here's the connection, that electron spin resonance alteration of the DNA molecule was that there was some kind of transduction system in the cell that raised that electron spin resonance signal to the level of the higher cortical experience, which we call thought. In other words, that what thinking is our interpretation of very rapid microfine changes in the electron spin resonance of DNA molecules in the nucleus of neurons. And since there is no counter theory on the table, nobody knows what thought is. I mean, neurologists aren't even ready to begin to discuss that. His theory seemed reasonable to at least play with for a while. And he said that we could load our systems with biodynamic tryptamines, harmaline, beta-carbolines, and that if you could generate a tone that was precisely the analog of the electron spin resonance of the molecule, and if you could get the geometry of the angle of attack of the sound, basically, on the molecule, exactly precise, that you could force the molecule, the drug molecule, into the DNA, and that it would shift the electron spin resonance of the DNA, and that it would permanently bond in there. Now, this seems to me at least worth exploring. Harmine is, if you look at it, it looks like an antenna. You know, it has the five-sided central structure and then the two benzene rings. It has charge transfer running around those rings. It's very architecturally suited to perform the function of a kind of a transmitter antenna. So imagine what we're doing here is we're dropping a harmine molecule down onto the DNA, which is itself giving off what is called a hyperfine ESR signature. And the harmine is amplifying that hyperfine signal, and this is being detected as a higher cortical experience, which we call the psychedelic experience. And that then what the psychedelic experience is assumed to be in this interpretation is it is the sum total of all information garnered by the species over time and stored in the silent portions of the DNA. Do you see? So what we're talking about here is a kind of mechanical, materialist, chemical approach to the amplification of the hidden portions of the DNA. And it is true that many people taking harmine in its pure form and taking ayahuasca report a hum. It's a characteristic of the intoxication. Dennis claimed that this was actually the electron spin resonance signal of the harmine. So when we got to La Chorrera, and under the inspiration of recklessly large doses of Stropharia cubensis, which we found growing in the pasture there, he decided that what we could do was we would take a trip, but that he would attempt to imitate the harmine hum, and that granted, you know, the human body is a very gross thing in comparison to the almost quantum chemical domain of the synapse and the nucleus, but that nevertheless, if you could generate the sound correctly, you would force the molecule into the neuron, and then there was another part of the theory which had to do with the idea that these psychedelic molecules are like octaves of each other. And if any of you have ever played the cello, you know that you can sound a note on the cello, and then if you still the string, you will hear what are called overtonal harmonics. It will sound in the octave above and below the octave in which the note was struck. And he felt that if again, I mean, I'm giving this to you at enormous speed.
Long reach.
Superconductivity, which is normally associated with low temperatures, is in fact a low temperature phenomenon, but that's when you have populations of trillions of molecules. Really what superconductivity means is the stilling of molecular motion. And if it's absurd to speak of a single atom or a single molecule as being 275 degrees Kelvin below zero, because temperature is a phenomenon of mass populations of molecules. But he felt that you could essentially still these molecules, and one of the peculiar qualities of superconductive molecules is that they will bond to anything. They have a tremendous stickiness about them. So he thought that the human voice could be used to cancel the molecular motion of these harmine molecules, and you would only have to do it for a millisecond, even though the making of the tone might take 20 or 30 seconds. If you achieved the correct geometry, the correct tonality, the correct situation,
this shouldn't
for
take
just
too much
a
longer.
millisecond, the molecule would drop, the drug molecule would drop into superconducting configuration, it would intercalate, and it would bond permanently into the thing, into the neural DNA. And then it would begin broadcasting this amplified and expanded electron spin resonance. And that what this would be, he thought, was, well, he felt that it would generate like an acoustical hologram of the contents of the DNA. And he thought that this is what the magical blue phlegm is.
There we go. We made it around to the beginning.
Ontological status of being part matter, part psyche, arises from the fact that it is an acoustical hologram generated out of the body. It's like ectoplasm or something. It's a wavering image of the sum total of the information within the DNA. It's sort of like trying to produce a television set without a television, the experience of television without a television set. Well, I thought that all of this sounded so wacky, and that there were so many untested assumptions and hypotheses linked together in this tinker toy structure. And since we had nothing better to do in the evenings, why not, was my attitude. So the experiment was performed, and Dennis went bananas for about 3 weeks, and we had all kinds of peculiar adventures. But one of the things that happened was that I, who had been the utter skeptic, if not the contemptuous skeptic of this, noticed that immediately after the experiment, I began to have funny ideas. And it was as though he just turned a switch. And what he had said would happen was that he would generate out of his body a glowing blue disk, which would be the holding mode of this, we called this process hypercarbolation. Why? I haven't the faintest idea at this distance. But the idea was essentially that you could cause your soul to become visible and to become stabilized in three-dimensional space, that it was like a tool that...
If you're here and you are listening to this and you are with it, then I think that you're gonna like this channel, because this is as far out as we'll probably go. This stuff is like really so on the edge. And we are listening to Terrence Mckenna go off the rails about how psychedelic substances work in our biology and the intercolation of the psychedelic molecules and our neural substrate. And so it's an out there talk. I might switch to just playing Final Fantasy soon with just the sound and just sort of talking, but I'm getting a card in Chocobo Hot and Cold before I do anything else. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you're loving Terrence McKenna.
You could give birth to a thing which was an artifact, and yet at the same time it was yourself. And that what human evolution and human history was pushing forward was the generation of, hey, let's be frank, the philosopher's stone. Out of the human body, you could, through a union of harmine and mind and psilocybin and intentionality, you could produce a kind of doppelganger, which would not look like a human being. It would look, in its holding mode, like this glowing blue disk. But because it is both mind and matter, it would have, the way he thought of it was as a hyperdimensional molecule. In other words, yesterday, Jonathan talked about dextro and rotary rotation of molecules, that you can rotate them to the right and to the left. Well, yes, in 3 dimensions, but we know that the universe is, some people think, 11-dimensional. So beyond dextro and levo rotation, there is also hyperdimensional rotation, or hypercarbolation. And he thought that once you did this, the continued existence of your physical body would become optional, and you would be able to operate as this thing which is essentially the imagination bound into 3-dimensional space. And he thought that these shamans producing this Flem, that they were on the brink of something like this. Now, I grant you that this is far-fetched. If you think I don't think it's far-fetched, you don't understand where I'm coming from. But the idea was so incredibly beguiling and attractive, because what he said was, if you have this, if you can produce this ultimate tool, then you can do anything. I mean, if you want to take a shower, just stretch it out and water pours out of it.
You gotta
if you want to go somewhere, you turn it over and sit on it and it flies. If you're hungry, you eat it. Do you get the idea? So I said, you can't be serious, Dr. McKenna, although he wasn't a doctor at the time. So this experiment was performed. He began to behave very peculiarly, and I began to have these funny ideas. And one thing which did happen, which I offer as evidence for the manipulation of some very, very peculiar effect out on the edge of intelligibility, was I didn't sleep for 11 days. And he had said this would happen. He said, you will no longer need to sleep, you will no longer excrete, you will no longer eat, because your body has become superconductive. And you are essentially, you have sealed yourself off. You have become the stuff of soul. You are no longer embedded in the world of metabolism. And
sounds pretty good.
And what also and he had the idea that the thing would occur instantly. This blue disc would appear instantly. And of course, when the experiment was performed, nothing of the sort happened. But instead, what I began to generate were what I call, from my experience with Jungian psychology, totality symbols. A totality symbol is an idea which explains everything. It can be as simple as the syllable Om, or a mandala, or a mathematical description of reality. I mean, some totality symbols are obviously more appropriate, more effective than others. And kind of a psychotic episode, but it was a very curious psychotic episode because it took the form of being spread out through the whole universe, and then over a period of 21 days, imploding backward into yourself. So that, like, the first day after the experiment, he was just incomprehensibly bizarre, just universally. I mean, it was like witnessing someone acting out the Big Bang or something like that. Then the next day, he was condensed down into the local cluster. And we got a recitation somewhat like Olaf Stapleton's The Star Maker. Is a macro-physical reflection of this thing which we were trying to create, which he called the lens. And so by a series of telescoping leaps, he made his way toward normality, condensing down through the galaxy to the solar system, spending a day on each planet as he made his way toward the Earth, becoming all the life on the Earth, then becoming all human life, then becoming all Irish life, then becoming our entire family, doing perfect voice imitations of all the relatives and revealing all this knowledge of, skeletons in the closet and suppressed stuff, and stuff that I don't know how he knew all this stuff. I mean, he at times appeared to work miracles. At one point, I was trying to test him and his abilities, and I recalled that there was a box that my grandfather had given me that you opened with a little silver key that had been lost for years and years. And I said, well, if you can do anything, why don't you produce the key that to that box, which neither of us had seen even the box for a dozen years. By this time, he was naked and locked in a room at the mission. And he went and he would make these bizarre gestures, these strange I don't know what was going on. And he went into a period of concentration, gave a wild squawk, and slammed into my hand and gave me the key. Gave me the key. He was naked. He had been locked in this room for 14 days at that time. And I was like, I didn't know what was going on. But what was happening to me was, I was like utterly unconcerned for his mental health or any practical concern, which was causing a lot of problems for the other people on the expedition. In classical psychology, this is called a folie à deux, a delusion of two. It's a simultaneous schizophrenic episode. It usually involves a mother and a daughter. I've never heard of a brother-brother folie à deux. But it was accompanied by all these exterior manifestations, freak rainbows, and in my case, an encounter with a UFO. And this UFO encounter had a very curious quality to it. Not that they don't always, I suppose. But this was even more curious than the pedestrian UFO encounter. What happened was, it was on the 13th day of the reversal, and that I had had this intimation. There was something going on about the Southwest. I wasn't clear quite what it was, and the two women on the expedition were that afternoon washing our clothes down by the Chorro, by the lake, and I looked across the lake and I saw in the sky not a rainbow but just a spot in the sky that was a spectrogrammatic diffraction, you know, a little patch of rainbow. And I asked the women if they saw it, and they said they didn't. And then it intensified. And by this time, I was plenty in the doghouse as well. I mean, this put a great deal of strain on our small party, as you can imagine. And this spectrogrammatic iridual intensified. And then I said to them, now do you see it? And they looked and they said, oh, yeah, it's, you know, big deal, not much. But I knew. And knowing means the voice was speaking to me. All kinds of weird things went on. I mean, I discovered that the closer I was to water, the easier it was for me to rhyme, which I've never. And then years later, I encountered a Celtic saying, "Poetry is made at the edge of running water," and the thing would give me these aphorisms. Like one time it said, the clone's load is a stoned mode. And, you know, and I was not sleeping. I was now 11 days without sleep. So that night I decided
feel like it's been 11 days since I've slept, especially listening to this.
Because I stayed up all night, and I would walk in the fields, and the thing would would connect up the constellations for me and show me where they were in the sky. There was also embedded in all this thing the intimation of this thing called the teacher, which was a giant insect-like thing that was always like right over here. And there was the sense of something watching us from the sky.
Okay, so that talk, that was very fun to listen to, but what we're gonna do is go on break here for just a little bit. It's probably a little past 8, so what we're gonna do is go on break. I will hop on back, and we'll just play Final Fantasy to close out the night. Really straightforward. Thank you all for being with me. If you're enjoying the content and you are interested in hearing more Terrance Mckenna, you want to hear my perspective on things, we're back, and it's good to be back. It's been a good night so far. So, we're gonna play Final Fantasy, and we're just gonna enjoy the music and the game. I'm about to do Chorrera, and we'll just do a little bit of it, and here we go. I think that probably sounds okay. And we just saved, so we're gonna go into Chorrera. This part of the game, our party is split up, and Dagger and Steiner and Marcus all got trapped in Alexandria, and we're here at Chorrera, where we're kind of following, we're trying to basically save as many Burmesians as we can who have fled here. Hold on, my glasses are stuck in my hair. I just want to remedy this situation. The art here is awesome, and I'm using something called the Moguri mod, which makes the backgrounds a much higher resolution than the original game. So every single screen is just absolutely stunning and just gorgeous. And so I'm actually gonna take it really slow so that we can really appreciate the beauty of this art. I think you can see my mouse on the screen, like all of it is so amazing. It's all one tree. And this is the future that I imagine for our planet, is living in like biologically like enhanced trees, like techno elves. I think that would be so cool. Pull lever, open up that door. How many other people have streamed Final Fantasy IX? And then how many of them are trans? I wonder. And then of the trans people who have done it, how many were trans women? And then how many of them were me? This is a pretty new stream in the universe, and I'm so excited to share like one of my favorite games with the world. I mean, everybody's seen Final Fantasy IX, but I don't know. Nobody's seen me play Final Fantasy IX, and watching people play games is kind of sweet sometimes. And when I'm watching it, like, I feel like almost detached from the experience. Like, it almost feels like I'm watching someone else play, in a way. Especially, well, it's just a game that I know this well. I forget if we should go up there first, though, which is funny, because I just said I know it well. Yeah, I thought so. We do this, and then I think we go to the bottom one after. Yeah, that was right. Pretty typical RPG route there. The music here is pretty trippy. And it just looks so beautiful. Wow. I really love the plant on the left side of the screen so much. It's so beautiful. It's a very quiet game. It's so perfectly designed. It's so immersive. Thanks for delivering this letter from Alta. Things are terrible in Burmecia. They're terrible everywhere. But that's why we're streaming, is so that there's a place to hang out and sort of relax for the day with someone who isn't trying to be sort of getting you to do anything or, you know, be a certain way. Because gosh, society pressures us to be like so many different things, and right now I'm working at a job where I'm not actually out as transgender to anyone because all of my information is legally changed and I don't have to tell anyone that I'm trans, so I don't. And it's so weird, especially balancing it with a stream where I am openly transgender, but then other parts of my life are hidden too, because like I don't want to share everything online, right? And there's like certain things that I like started this to talk about, right? Although I could talk about anything forever, probably, given enough time. But eventually I'll die or have to go to sleep. You know, I remember this place having lots of random battles, but in this run it feels like there haven't been that many. This feels like one of the first ones, honestly. Forget how you're supposed to take these things out proper. I think I'm gonna just attack the core, and we'll see what happens when I do that. And I could fast forward, but like, that's not what we do here, except for when we do, you know? We'll just fast forward when it feels appropriate, but right now, we're just enjoying the Final Fantasy IX aesthetic, because, I mean, what is there if there isn't the journey, right? And these are straight journey. I have so much other stuff that I have to do, like, around the channel. Like, I need to work on video editing, most of all, but streaming itself is just so fun. I actually didn't mean to press that, honestly, but I guess it worked out. You must do science in Final Fantasy IX, yeah. You have to do science in most good RPGs, I feel like. Like, I like RPGs give you this, like, classic, like, elemental situation and a skill system where you can slightly tune your characters, I guess any RPG. Mash the B button. Oh shit, but the B button... Okay, these sections are gonna be rough because anytime it says on the screen that I have to use a key, it's gonna be the wrong one at first because it's saying B, but what it means is X, actually. And I had to do this for the blank fight too. But like anytime there's like an environmental situation that I have to respond to with a certain controller input. It's gonna say the wrong one and I have to translate in my mind, and so my reflexes are probably not gonna suffice for a lot of these, at least initially. Hold on, I'm gonna slowly walk through, I think is like kind of the strat for this. I think you like jump out to the right and it like lets you jump into that little spot. I might be wrong. I forget how you actually get that, to be honest. And I actually don't think I actually care to try and get it. I might try again because I went back into this. But I'm trying to remember if I can control Zidane to actually jump over there. And I think I'm just gonna try to not have to fall in. But I failed. Okay. I forget. I think that you like just jump out to the left, but it's not working. Yeah, there we go. That's sort of what I thought. I don't know why it didn't work the first time, to be honest. Sometimes those things in Final Fantasy IX are kind of rough. Later on, outside of Kuja's palace, there's another sand pit situation that's similarly, like, awkward, in my opinion. The controls aren't very good. I'm gonna accept not getting that treasure chest. Yo, you have no idea what you're watching before bed, but it's a vibe. That's sweet. Yeah, I actually have a spiritual name. So I talk a lot about like spirituality and like psychedelic stuff on this channel, and I have a spiritual name. I'm a techgnostic. I'll show you the let me show you the thing that I've been making on stream here. Techgnosticism. Okay, so I went to school for philosophy. Techgnosticism is sort of my own self-made philosophy. I won't go too into techgnosticism right now. This is pretty sweet, I promise. It's pretty cool. We'll get back to Final Fantasy in just a second. But techgnosticism, hold on, we will go back to Final Fantasy while I get through this. It's very weird before bed. Yo, life is weird, right? Everything about life is weird, and I just dig into it. That's like the psychedelic part of it. Just sort of diving into the weirdness and then like seeing what even is the universe. uh and I have no answers. I can't not exist, you know? It's so weird. As a trans person, I've had so much like self-hatred in my life, and it's still hard. Every day is just so hard. And like I'm here to talk about the trans experience a lot because it's just something that people haven't really heard about. And so often it's like I get like other people's weird vibes projected onto me. And like being trans is just a weird experience inherently. But you know, for someone like myself who has always just sort of dug into weirdness, and like I just turn over, I like pull up the rug and I just like try and just see what's under the rug, you know? What's under the rug of the world. It is so weird, though. Everything's weird, and the vibe of this channel's weird. But I was gonna talk about techgnosticism. One thing that I've been... Let me go to my background here. I was in the military. This is something I've just been feeling impassioned to talk about, is that I see the way that our government spends money, and we put all of our money into the military, where we have prisons where we're detaining people overseas, and we're paying guards, and the prisoners have more face-to-face time with their guards than... Well, that explains why Twitch recommended you to me. I'm always in trans streams and crap like that. Yo, thanks for joining. Trans streams are legit, and trans people are all just so amazing. All my work in my life has been around talking to people, and I grew up in a really weird environment where I wasn't ever gonna have access to like the resources to travel, and I was always depressed because I wanted to be like a cultured person. I don't know why I was so obsessed with that, but I wanted to feel like I could talk to people about like everywhere in the world. And what I realized, because I never really did get to travel outside of the US. Oh, sweet. Did you follow? Thank you so very much. I don't know if it was you or someone else. I imagine it was you. Hold on, we can find out definitively by going right here and just seeing. Thank you so much for following. It's really great. What I was saying about being cultured is that I was so worried about not ever having the ability to travel. Why am I on this screen? Let's go to this screen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was so worried about not having the ability to go places and learn stuff about the world. I'm not affiliate quite yet, but I will be soon. And oh, honestly, I feel like it's been an off night. So the fact that you're here and hanging out is amazing, because I promise it's gonna get even better as we go here. I have so many plans for the stream. But I'm going to try and finish this thought if I can, because I could go on forever, and I don't want to lose the thought, is that I started talking to people through my work and through just life, and I met people from all over the world, and I realized that, like, really I learn about the world through the people who have, like, grown up there. I've learned so much from them. Let me show you a little thing on Metta really quick. Metta is loving kindness, and they talk about how with Metta in the East, in China, in India, when you start cultivating loving kindness, that you're supposed to cultivate it for other people, or you're supposed to cultivate it for yourself, I'm sorry. In China and in India, they say that you're cultivating loving kindness for yourself, and then you cultivate it for other people. But that us in the West, we have an easier time starting with other people and then moving on to loving ourselves, because so many Westerners have grown up with a sense of shame from Christian culture. And I talked about this on the stream last night, but something that I want to talk about a lot, and it's in my PowerPoint here. By the way, if you're into the stream and you're into this PowerPoint that I have going on, you can check out my Discord, and you can also join the Discord, of course. And on the Discord, there is a link to the PowerPoint that I'm talking about, and I can also link all the resources that I put on the stream tonight and forever. Anyways, so yeah, in the East, when they practice loving kindness exercises, I'm more surprised. It feels like you just took shrooms when I... Oh yeah, so I was saying this earlier, that it feels like you took shrooms. And so I actually have a spiritual name. There's actually kind of a reason. If you see this anonymisoma, let me go into paint really quickly. I can actually explain why it feels that way when you're talking to me or when you see me. Hopefully I can do this before you have to go to bed. I know you said that you were going to go to bed soon, but this is something that's kind of cool. We'll use blue. We'll use pink. Non. Da. My. This is my spiritual name. So. Ma. Dasi. And so it's Dasi. Dasi. And so it's 1 a.m. and you tend to stay up till like 5 a.m. Meds give you a boost for an hour or two. You'll be around for a bit. I feel like I have a lot to say. And yeah, so I'm a techgnostic. A lot of people aren't familiar with the idea of Gnosticism, and I won't go too into it, but I've said this all on stream before. But where's the one I'm looking for is Gnostic intermediaries, basically. A Gnostic intermediary is someone like a pastor or a faith leader, and they basically say that they can commune with God, and you have to go through them in order to have a spiritual experience. And so that's inherently not Gnostic. I am Gnostic. That's not Gnostic. Similarly, in a revealed faith, the person lays out rules, how you should act in metaphysics, the context of our actual actions. So they say this is how you should act and why. But in a realized faith, there's just a proposed metaphysics. It's like, hey, this is how we perceive the world, and this is how we like consider like how we should act, and it's not really asking you to do anything. And I'm a Gnostic because I think that you don't need to go through anyone. I think everyone's in touch with the divine. I think everyone is divine in origin. So for that reason, in India, they're often given spiritual names, but I actually just took my own spiritual name because I already feel like I, have sort of found my own inner peace, and the name sort of came to me through a spiritual experience, and I've never been able to turn away from it. And so here's what it means. Ananda was the Buddha's number one servant, and this means bliss. This means bliss. And bliss. And the Maya suffix means permeating. That's a long word to spell this way, right? This is me trying to get a pen tablet. One day I need to get one of those. But for now, I'm just committing to the mouse on paint action for a minute. Permeating. I wrote permeation, but it's permeating. This is like when someone egg breaks, they overthink the hell about who they are. Here it is in a PowerPoint. Well, actually, I don't know. I feel like I was born with my egg broke. And so this means bliss and permeating, right? Soma is an intoxicant. Intoxicant. Toxicant. It's like a drug, intoxicant. It's like a nectar of the gods and goddesses. But what's interesting is that there was also a very famous Indian saintess named Anandamai Soma, or Anandamai Ma, rather. And Anandamai Ma was a saintess who is very loving, and I feel very connected to her. She was really focused on metta, which is what I'm focused on, is spreading loving kindness. And so when you say you feel like you're on shrooms, it's definitely like religion, but more wacky. Yeah, and not dogmatic and not imposing. I will never impose. Rather, I seek to spread the idea of novelty, because as I have with novelty up here, I believe that novelty is the telos of humanity. So novelty is actually like the core of everything in the universe. Novelty is the quality of improvisation, right? So nobody thinks about novelty nowadays, but novelty is a break in what is called habit. All of life is this sort of push and pull between novelty and habit. Habit is the pathway that gets formed where we develop a certain tradition or standard, and novelty seeks to break that standard and create new avenues that will break into habit again. But novelty allows for growth and development. And Socrates says that the telos of humanity is to be good. Telos means function. So a knife is supposed to be sharp, and Socrates says that if you're fulfilling your function, then you're being good. So the telos of a human being is to be good. So the quality of a human being is measured by whether they're good or bad. And if you're good, capital G, good, the form of good, then you're fulfilling your function, your telos as a human being. And I think that's pretty interesting and compelling. But Terrance McKenna, my favorite philosopher, says that the function or telos of a human being is novelty. It's novelty. It's to be novel. And I mean, I don't mean to be too self-indulgent. I mean to be a little self-indulgent. But like, this stream is pretty novel, right? I'm a pretty novel character. No matter what you think of me, I think. No matter what I think of me. I mean, I'm so self-conscious. Self-hate is just something that so many Westerners... I'm just assuming you're a Westerner. I have no idea. But it's just something that so many people struggle with, and I feel it. Anyways, so we're supposed to be novel, and I want this stream to be a force of novelty, because to me, it's the telos of humanity. We don't need to get back to there, but what does it mean for our function to be novel? I think that we're here to create infinite realities, And I think that the only way I can be helpful to the world is to try and do things to inspire completely new and creative thought and to help create new things myself, you know? East, west, it doesn't matter. You never know how people's lives are. It's true. You know nothing about anybody. I know nothing about anything. But here I am talking. You know, in the Tao Te Ching, it says that it's the famous line, those who speak don't know, and those who know don't speak. And so I have a stream, and I'm very self-conscious about the fact that those who speak don't know. And even if I was on my A game, I couldn't say the right thing. But in a certain way, that gives me a little bit of a comfort in knowledge and knowing that, oh, I haven't been playing music. Let me get some music going. It makes me like feel a little more comfortable. You think that I've read a bunch of random weird crap, and then I've gone, oh, that sounds cool and wacky, and then proceeded to do all this, when in reality, I know nothing, so all of this is meaningless. That's the harsh critique. No, seriously, it's like, I'm concerned about that. I am. It's a real vibe. Trust me. I think that there's two things that make that not entirely true. The first thing that makes it not entirely true is that Terrence Mckenna talks about this. That's me putting it into words I think I'll understand, but you by no means wish to offend or upset me. No, yo. You put it very succinctly, and you put it very politely. You really did. And that's it like hurts to read, because like that's the self consciousness that I have being a speaker and putting out original ideas, right? Is that it's very easy to undermine thought, but it's very hard to produce good novel thought, right? And as someone who's a musician, all the music on the channel is my own, if you're into it. I'm always worried about playing wrong notes too, and sometimes I do play wrong notes. It actually is like, you can only actually play the song correctly after you've said, or after you've played the wrong notes. And I think that you can't quite say exactly what you mean until you've rehearsed it enough times. But I think it's great someone like you is doing this, because it's not spoken about at all, and just because it might be meaningless, just like all religions, it doesn't mean we should not talk about it. Yeah, I think that that's also true. I don't think it's meaningless. I don't quite accept that totally. But I understand what you're saying. And yeah, I think it's good. I think that we have a very secular society. And you know, I wasn't even done saying what I was saying. I'm gonna finish saying what I was saying, and I'll go back to it. But what I was saying is that part one of it is that you know, you have to practice to say the message that you really want to say. And I'm still honing everything that I want to say. And it's not about the concert, it's about the long time. You think it's gonna do nothing for me, but who knows? If it helps you, go ahead. It's not meant to be like self-help, and it's not meant to be like a panacea for the world. I think it's very possible that our world could just be lost to global warming, and I think that there's a lot of really scary things that could happen in the future. There's a lot of really legitimate things to worry about in the world. I can't solve any of them. And I don't think that it's not meant to be anything as far as you're aware, but who knows, maybe it has a purpose. I'm not sure what your last statement is in reference to, so I'm not sure. It's not meant to be anything as far as I'm aware. I think you're talking about life is not meant to be anything. That's how I'm taking that. Okay, but then the other thing, so the first part of what I was saying is that I think that maybe it seems like I know less about what I'm talking about because I'm still organizing my thought. Part of my stream is me making all of this content because the PowerPoint isn't done yet, and I think it's going to be like a lot more clear. And part of the entertaining part of the stream is that I just have this forever touchstone where when I'm talking about off the rails stuff, I can go and reference slides that are like really perfect. And I don't think it's like an answer to life. I think life is a living mystery, and I don't think life can be solved. And as someone religious, I just like really believe that I can't understand anything. And one of my favorite quotes pretty much of all time is that life is not only stranger than we suppose, but life is stranger than we can suppose. And I think there's a lot of hard facts about life that we can't change, like resource demands, for example. Like, eventually we're going to run out of fossil fuels, and global warming is going to hurt our planet. These are like real, tangible, hard facts that we can't wish away, and we can't like wish away problems like racism and transphobia. I really appreciate you being here on the stream, and I really appreciate your frank commentary on what I had to say, because these are the exact types of conversations I'm hoping to have. And these are, that was like a very thoughtful critique of what I'm presenting here, because in one part, I want this show to be entertainment, which I think you're seeing that it is. Like, I think that you're aware that it's supposed to be just like fun. In one way, this stream is an attempt to just like appeal to people to just like think about the problem and the fact that I feel like by being a presence, by me being a presence on the internet that people can just come hang out with, if I'm here and I'm just being peaceful and just saying the same thing consistently and creating a consistent space in the universe, then it gives some sort of air of stability to the universe, if that makes any sense. One thing that you're doing for the world is by being in this channel, because you're helping me be a little bit more visible, and your chat is making this channel a lot more interesting, because like this is really thoughtful commentary that is really putting me to the test to like actually consider what I'm saying. Because when I went to school for philosophy, I did feel much more sharp than I am now. But part of my growth in the last couple of years has been to loosen up, because I was very rigid for a long time because of a lot of trauma in my life. And a big part of my story is that I worked in mental health in a role where I shared my own experience of adverse conditions as a child. You argue with fanatics on the regular. Fanatics are very scary. No matter what they're fanatical about. I truly don't consider myself a fanatic, in the sense that even though I have a metaphysics that I believe, I don't like impose it on people, and I'm also not even like held to it. Like, if people teach me facts, I try to just like understand the universe with what I've just been told, and I just try to hold all the knowledge that I have. I I think that a true skeptic is first and foremost skeptical of their own positions. You think I'm fanatical, but you don't think I'm rude, like 90% of the people who go under that term. Well, thank you for at least thinking I'm not rude. Can I ask what it is that makes me fanatical? Because I'm truly not trying to put out. Well, I guess, yeah, maybe maybe I am kind of zealous. I'm kind of a zealous, like, here's my metaphysics. Let me pull out my map and show you the afterlife. I have it written, and here is the first layer of the fifth ether realm. um, I'd like to make ether realms in virtual reality. That is what I would really like. Your whole personality is this subject. Take that away, and you're nothing. I mean, that's kind of true. I'm an aesthetic and like a vibe, but it's like a crafted vibe to make people think like a very particular way. Honestly, people need a space where like it's novel thought and it's like different thought, because the only way you can inspire creative thought is to just do things that nobody's ever done. You know, when I was in mental health, like these people had been talking to therapists for 20 years, and that's not a good thing. These people aren't helping them. They're digging holes for them. So like for me, when I'm talking to someone, I try, and when somebody tells me something, I try to respond with something I don't think anyone's ever said before to them, because it's the only way it'll help them and me. because I because I certainly don't know how life is. It says, just like my personality is being a mean bitch, because I like to be the one to take that, because I like to be one, take that away from me. Hold on, I'll reread that in a second. I just become a shambling mess with all my anxieties and fears. Okay, I'm gonna read that one more time. Just like my personality is being a mean bitch, cause I like to be one take that away from me. Yeah, I can't grammar for crap, apologies. Well, let me see if I can allow this post for people to read. See, it got deleted. Okay, so that should start with just, but at least it posted. And I forget what train of thought we were just on. I forget what we were just talking about, because a lot of chat just got deleted by mistake. That's how it's kind of feeling right now. Bad luck and extreme misfortune will haunt our pathetic souls for all eternity. Yeah, I actually have no reservations about the fact that my personality is the stream, which is good, because that means that I have infinite content, because anything that I do is just circling around who I am. I come off as harsh and mean, but I'm a big softie behind it all. Okay, so you said that you come off as harsh and mean, but you're a big softie behind it all. And it reminds me of this story that my friend who was working in Germany said. This person told them that Americans were like peaches and that Germans were like coconuts. I think that I have a lot of very legitimate things to say, and then I think that like the things that I have to say, you're just wacky due to meds and whatnot. Confidence is a dangerous tool. Not even HRT. Oh yeah, HRT is a medication. No, you're right. I just like forget that, because honestly, even though I'm doing this trans stream, I forget that I'm trans often. I really do. My legal information has changed, and I've had surgery, and I've talked about surgery on stream. I'm willing to talk about it. And my life is just wonderful. It's really, really good. I love my life. I forget that I'm on HRT, and that is medication. You're right. Honestly, I like almost went crazy my first year of being on HRT, but not because of HRT. It was because of like society, and that's like important. That's like so important. Is that HRT didn't make me go crazy. I just like was dealing with processing how hard transness is. So just so that you have a reference, is that I've been transitioning for quite some time. I don't really even keep track of how long it has been, but I believe it's around 7 years that I've been transitioning. And it gets better every day for me. And I mean, I just feel beautiful and happy. And like, I feel like something that has been really amazing for me lately. And I don't mean to be just like all euphoric while you're feeling shitty. I know it's so shitty to watch someone who's just like super happy when you're like down. But the whole spiritual name, Anandamai Soma, elixir of permeating bliss, sort of tying that in with the quote, to live in love even among those who don't love, is that like, yeah, see, exactly, is that I like to try and show that there's like a bright end to the journey. Like, it's so beautiful. I actually got rejected by a guy today. I was like meeting up with someone, and like we've known each other for a long time, and I thought this person was into me. And I don't know how I felt about them, but I was like, like I'll give it a shot. I'll just see like if they're interested in me. And I asked very casually what they'd think, and they were like, "No, I'm not interested." And I was like, "Oh my god!" Like the rejection actually like kind of hurt, but I was also like proud of myself for how like it didn't hurt that much. Transforms and safe spaces are full of toxicity. It's not their fault. It happens when you shove a bunch of moody, young, and old trans people into a Discord server. Yeah, honestly, a lot of trans spaces are super hard, and when yeah, the young and old thing is a really tricky thing. And there's like, people are really getting over ingrained transphobia sometimes, especially early on. I was struggling with a lot of different feelings when I first was transitioning. I felt so robbed, and I still do a lot of the time. I feel robbed by the world, and like nothing will ever be okay. But honestly, like, it seriously just gets better though. Like like certain days are like obviously just so hard, and I felt really dysphoric today after I got rejected. I felt so dysphoric. I felt like so disgusted because it's like, did this person just reject me because I'm trans, or is it because they're like just not into me? And I really don't know. And it's like, I'm not gonna ask this person that. It doesn't matter. Their reasons shouldn't matter. You just accept it. But like, what makes life harder being on HRT is that you're fully self-medicated and trying to worry about whether you can get meds in time. Will the next pack be a dud and make you feel unwell, or can I even afford it? I know my heart is breaking reading that because transness. Let me turn the music up just slightly so that we can hear. Yeah, so it's so fucking expensive, right? Cis people have no idea how expensive being trans is. They have no idea. And I don't know if you've had laser hair removal, but laser cost me hundreds of dollars per session. Hundreds of dollars. I had to have laser in preparation for surgery as well, and that costs hundreds of dollars. And there was this whole situation where I was in a catch-22 with my insurance, where they said that in order for my laser hair removal to be covered by insurance, I needed to be pre-authorized for my surgery, but I couldn't be pre-authorized for surgery until my laser hair removal was over. And so they said by their own rules that I was eligible for insurance coverage on my laser hair removal if it's for surgery, but that I couldn't unless it was pre-authorized, but I couldn't get it pre-authorized unless I had laser done. And that put off my surgery for years. Can you imagine how heartbroken I was and how upset I was as a fully grown adult who had been working as a professional to get health insurance for a long time? It sucked a lot. And I also was gatekept for hormones when I first tried to do that. I was very suicidal for a while there. I totally, like, the beginning of HRT is just unreal, and the worries about the finances for HRT is so scary. It's terrifying. And like, I don't have health insurance right now, so I just stockpiled hormones, and I have like 3 or 4 months worth. But if I don't have insurance by like 4 months from now, then I'm not going to be able to get any more hormones. And I think my situation should be resolved by then, but like, it's very scary. It's very, very scary. You're paying about $120 for 3 months of 2 milligram pills. It goes up to 4 milligrams, so 240 in 3 months, trying to switch over to injections at the moment, so it'll be like $60 for 3 to 6 months. Yeah, that's so much money. It's so much money. And like right now, I'm still dealing with the cost for surgery. Long story short, but it's basically like it's basically $4,000 even after my insurance paid for everything. And technically I have other means of paying for it, but I'm dealing with another transphobic issue where even though my name is legally changed with my bank and with the state and on Social Security and my birth certificate, my name is changed everywhere. But my last job hasn't changed my name, so I can't get this check for my surgery cashed because it's in my dead name. but my dead name is no longer legal at my bank. And so it's a struggle, but so is everything being trans, it feels like. And that's why it's so important that trans channels exist, you know, and trans representation in general. Because, like, before I made this stream, I went online and I was like, I wonder how many trans streamers there are. And there's like a decent number of trans streamers, but not many of them do Blender or like play Final Fantasy. Or, well, actually, I bet they play Final Fantasy, but not many of them do Blender. Nobody's like me because we're all special, you know? In the UK, it's free here. Okay, so you're from the West, but you're from the UK. I see. Yeah. Oh gosh. I've read a lot about NHS and the lines, the waits there. That's so bad. 5 years to be seen for hormones. That's unreal. 1 to 3 years waiting for surgeries. Oh my god, that's so heartbreaking. Being a young 19-year-old, deciding if you should eat yourself off the nearest bridge. You decided to take pills which would make you happy. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with that. I remember when I was that young, I never thought I was going to be able to transition because I just didn't think that I was going to have the resources. I haven't gone into it like that much just with you on stream, but I've talked about like my adverse experiences when I was young before, and I was in a family that was very cold and rather hateful, and I ended up being homeless when I was a teenager. You know, I had no health insurance, and life was so hard, and I ended up joining the army in order to pay for school. You said, it's all good. I found my own way around the problems. It's not perfect, but it works. I'm not upset. It would just be nice to have a professional to talk to about why my boobs hurt so much. Like a real professional, a doctor. And unfortunately, I'm not a doctor, but what I can say is that the boob hurting to me is a euphoric thing. Anytime my boobs hurt, I'm like, oh my god, they're growing. Because they still do after many years. I've had like spurts where they hurt, and I've been like, holy shit, my boobs are still bigger. And my boobs are like the perfect size. I got very, very lucky. I mean, I got lucky in so many ways. My hair is just beautiful, and I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things I got lucky with. It was euphoric at first, but not like, now it's like, can you not? I know it hurts while you're sleeping, especially. It's pretty rough. But yeah, there's not a lot of spaces where you can talk about these things online. It's really hard. So I'm glad that I have this stream here available to talk to people who are going through this, you know? Oh gosh, your mom hugged you tightly, and so it just hurts so bad. Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine, for sure. But, you know, it means that your pills are working, and it means that things are going to be on the bright horizon. She doesn't let you talk to her about this stuff. As long as you're self-medicating, you aren't allowed. Oh, gosh. Well, you know, I mean, honestly, like, I don't think hormones are dangerous, frankly. Like, I think that the people's reactions to how dangerous hormones are largely overblown, frankly. I think that the people who complain about hormones should really just like focus more on not eating like sugar, I guess. I need to really push in Final Fantasy to a save point because we're not going to be streaming for that much longer tonight. I'm just going to go to the next save point in Final Fantasy. But it was starting to trip me out. After you said it was trippy, I was like, yeah, this is really, really trippy. This is really trippy. I'm going to go back into it, but we're going to okay, we're gonna just try and get to a save point here. This is such a good part of the story, and like I wish that I had the energy to talk about like the context of everything in the story. But I'm like kind of tired now. We're like at the end of the night.
It was shown in, I believe, 1966 by the chemists Yielding and Sturglantz that psychedelic molecules do intercalate into DNA in vitro, in the test tube, in a series of very elegant experiments